Please be seated. The court is now in session, and for today's proceedings, we will hear the testimony of a civil party through TCP 303. And the greffier, Ms. Sakalwati, could you report the attendance of the parties and individuals to today's proceedings? Sakalwati. Good morning, Mr. President. For today's proceedings, all parties to this case are present. As for Noon Chi, he is present in the holding cell downstairs as he waives his right to be present in the courtroom. The waiver has been delivered to the greffier, and the civil party through TCCP 303 is ready to be called by the chamber. Today we do not have a reserved witness. Thank you. President, thank you. The chamber will now rule on the request by Noon Chi. The chamber has received a waiver from Noon Chi to be present in the courtroom. It is dated 12 February 2000. His counsel about the consequence of this waiver, that in no way it can be construed as a waiver of his rights to be tried fairly or to challenge evidence presented or admitted to this court at any time during this trial. The chamber has also received a medical report by the duty doctor at the ECCC dated 12 February 2015, who notes that the health condition of the accused is that he has a backache and cannot sit for long, and recommends that the chamber shall allow him to follow the proceedings remotely from a holding cell downstairs. Based on these above information, and in pursuant to Rule 8135, the chamber grants Noon Chi's request to follow the proceedings from a holding cell downstairs via an audio-visual means, and that applies for today's proceedings. And as Noon Chi waives his right to be present in the courtroom, the AV unit is instructed to link the proceedings to the holding cell downstairs so that Noon Chi can follow the proceedings remotely. And that applies for today's proceedings. Court officer, could you usher the civil party through TCCP 303 into the courtroom? President, good morning, Mr. Civil Party. What is your name? Civil Party. Good morning, Mr. President. My name is Ri Pau. President, thank you. Can you tell the court when you were born? Civil Party. I was born in 1957. Question. Can you tell the court where was your place of birth? Answer. I was born in Priel, Kirivung, Takao province. Question. And where is your current address? Answer. Currently, I live in Priel, Kirivung, Takao province. Question. Were you born elsewhere or you were born at your current place? Answer. I was born in Priel village, Saum commune, Kirivung district, Takao province. Question. What is your current occupation? Answer. I am a rice farmer. Question. From 17 April 1975 to 6 January 79, where did you live and what did you do? Answer. Before 75, I lived in Priel village, Saum commune, Kirivung district, Takao province. President, I asked you about the period of Democratic Cambodia, that is from 17 April 1975 to 7 January 79, where you were and what you did during this period. Answer. After 17 April 1975, I went to live in Vietnam, and by February 1976, I was exchanged to come and live in Cambodia, in Thnao Chum village, Kampong Trobai commune, Tram Kok district, Takao province. Question. What is your father's name? Answer. My father is Ri Kao. Question. And your mother's name? Answer. Her name is Ngat Sup. Question. And what is your wife's name and how many children do you have together? Answer. My current wife is Chum Ran and we have 3 children. President, thank you, Mr. Ripo. And as a civil party, the Chamber will give you an opportunity at the end of your testimony to make a statement of impact about the suffering inflicted upon you during the Democratic Cambodia period, if you wish to do so. And you also have the right to put a question if you want to do through the Chamber. And pursuant to Rule 91B of the ECCC internal rules, the lead co-lawyers for civil parties are given the floor first to put question to this civil party, and the Chamber would like to remind the combined time for the lead co-lawyers and the prosecution is for 1 full morning session, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning to all of you. Good morning to you, Civil Party. I'm going to put to you a certain number of questions, and then I will give the floor to my colleague, Lo Chun-Ti. My first question, civil party, where did you live? Where were you living on 17 April 1975?
Before 17 April 1975, I was living in Priel Village, Saum Commune, Kri Vrung District, Takay Province.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Do you remember when you moved into Kampuchea Kraum?
It happened in 1975 when I moved to live in Kampuchea Kraum.
Thank you. Do you know if your move occurred a long time or not so long or after 17 April 1975?
That is true. By 1976, I was part of the exchange program, and I was exchanged to come and live in Cambodia. And at that time, I came to live in Tnaut Chum village, Pok Trobait commune, Tramkot district, Takay province.
Thank you. Where were you living, you and your family, between April 1975 and the moment when you were the object of this exchange that you are describing?
When I was exchanged by the Khmer Rouge, who sent the Vietnamese to Vietnam, I was brought in to live in Tnaut Chum village for about 10 days, and then I was assigned to a mobile unit in Kbal Po. And after that, I was forced to work hard day and night to dig canals, to build dams, and to spin water wheels, and I was deprived of food, and I was not given sufficient clothing.
Thank you. I'm now going to revisit, go a bit further back into time, and I'm going to ask you specific questions regarding this exchange that you described. I wanted to know why your family took the decision of leaving as part of this exchange.
At that time, I fled to Vietnam, and because my parents missed our native country, and we heard that we would be sent back to Cambodia, then together with several other families, we returned to live in Cambodia, and we didn't know anything about the killing by the regime.
Thank you. Why did you escape to Vietnam?
Before we fled to Vietnam, Cambodia was in a war situation. Pol Pot forces were fighting against the Lon Nol forces. And wherever the Pol Pot forces reached, they would burn people's houses and destroy the village. And that we could then bear the situation along with other Cambodian people living along the border. We fled.
So, if I understand you correctly, you fled to Vietnam, you stayed there for a few months until February 1976, as you said earlier, and it's then that you and your family decided to return to Cambodia through this exchange program. Is that correct? Do I have the events in the right order?
That is correct. At that time, I didn't know anything about the policies of the Khmer Rouge. Together with other Cambodians who fled to live in Vietnam. And then we heard about the exchange, and we didn't think much about it, as we were only thinking about our homeland. So we decided to return.
Thank you. How did you hear about this exchange program? Who were the people who spoke to you about this program?
At that time, Vietnam and Pol Pot were getting along well along the border, and I didn't know why there was such an exchange program. Then we heard the Khmer Rouge agents or representatives who made contact with the Vietnam authority to exchange for Cambodians to come to Cambodia and the Vietnamese to return to Vietnam.
Thank you. Can you explain to the court or describe the information that was given to you that was presenting this exchange program? You said that Khmer Rouge came to speak to you about this program. What did they tell you in order to encourage you to join this program?
The Khmer Rouge made contact with the Vietnamese side, and I didn't know much about what was happening. But then the Vietnamese officials informed us that we, the Cambodian people, would be returned to Cambodia as part of the exchange program. So we, who fled from Cambodia, discussed and agreed to return together to our homeland.
And did you know to which village you were going to return and what would be the living conditions in this village? Did you return to the same place where you were living before you left for Vietnam?
Before I went to Vietnam, I was living in Ampie Svai, Letri Commune, Svai Trong district, and when I returned, I lived in Knao Chum, Pok Tro Baik, Tram Kok district, Takai province.
Je reviendrai sur cette information.
I will get back to this information a little later on, but I'd like you to tell us a bit more how this return to Cambodia happened. Can you tell us if you left by truck, by car, if you were escorted by soldiers or not, and did you leave with several families or were you alone? Can you tell us a little bit about how this return happened?
During the exchange, there were many Cambodians on the Vietnamese side, and upon our arrival at Phnom Dun or Dun Mountain, the Khmer Rouge told us that we had to stay there overnight, awaiting the arrival of the Upper Ongka. And next morning, the vehicle came to transport us, and it was a CMC truck, and there were about 10 of them. And we were not transported to one location, as 5 vehicles were sent to one location and the rest were sent elsewhere.
And do you remember the number of families or of people who were part of this exchange program together with you?
President Civil Party, please wait for the microphone to be activated first. Civil Party, I can recall some of them. To my knowledge, the number of people who fled to live in Vietnam from my village, there were 1,000 families, and we were put into one location in Vietnam. And we were given some necessities by the American organization as we were considered refugees. So I still recall that there were about 1,000 to 1,500 families. And when we returned to Cambodia, we were divided into 3 different phases. And for my batch, I traveled first with other families, and then there were other batches who would be returned later.
Thank you, Civil Party. Going back a bit earlier in time, I would like to know if you were able to take with you personal objects during this trip. Were you able to take with you your possessions, your money, clothes? Can you tell us a little bit how things happened?
When we returned to Cambodia, all of us sold our cows, water buffaloes, or horses in order to get the money to make our trip back home. And when we arrived at the place where we were allowed to rest, the Khmer Rouge collected all the belongings, including money and jewelry, and we were told that we would be fed by Ongka. So everything that we received from the sales of the cattle were all collected by the Khmer Rouge.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Can you please describe for us how you crossed the border? You said you were in several vehicles. There were 1,500 families in all. How did you cross the border? Were there families on the other side of the border crossing into Cambodia as well?
Answer. At that time, after the exchange, we crossed the border, and it was closed, and no entry or departure from the border. So it was prohibited any entry after the exchange program.
Avez-vous vu à l'époque
At the time, did you see families crossing in the opposite direction? Were you with your families?
Answer: yes, it is true. When we arrived at Phnom Penh, the Khmer Rouge soldiers strictly prohibited any movement at that area, and they were on strict guard duty, and they told people not to move anywhere outside of their area.
Est-ce qu'à l'époque, vous aviez...
At the time, were you and your family surprised when you arrived in Cambodia and your money was confiscated, as you said? How did you feel at the time upon your arrival?
Answer: at our arrival, we hoped that we returned to our homeland, but later, when we were transported to Tanaut Chirum, after the confiscation of our property, we feel very regret, and we were sorry our happy life in our home in Cambodia, because we had no idea when we were there that our property will be confiscated and we will be exposed to forced labor. We would suffer common eating until we face the real situation in Cambodia.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. What I wanted to know was whether you, your parents, or other members of your family entered Cambodia with identity papers. And if yes, what happened to your identification documents?
Answer: I would like to tell the court that at that time we had no identity card. Old people and a person who is 20 years or more would have a card, a black card, and anything like ID card or document were collected and burned out. They did not allow us to carry with us for future reference or anything.
Juste pour bien comprendre,
In order to properly understand your testimony, tell us, when were those documents burnt?
Answer: when they collected from us, they piled and they burned them out in front of us, including the card and other document related to identity, and also currency was also burned out, and they told us that Angka will take care of you, and we were told that here we have cooperatives and we have a collective Angka, and you all will be ready to receive meals and accommodation to be provided by Angka. Don't worry.
pouvez-vous nous dire, monsieur la participante,
Mr. Civil Party, can you tell us which of your family members accompanied you on your return to Cambodia?
Answer, if you want me to list down, I forget some of them because there were many members in my family. I remember only my parents' names.
Aviez-vous des frères et sœurs à l'époque?
Did you have any brothers and sisters at the time with whom you returned to Cambodia?
Respond, yes. They returned along with me, but after 10 days, they were separated and sent to work in a unit, and the female sibling would be sent to a different by their sex, and the children were also separated to work in their respective unit, and the parents were also separated to work in their separate unit for the regime.
Merci.
Thank you. So you are saying that after you arrived in Cambodia, you spent 10 days with your family members, and after the 10 days, you were separated and sent to different units. If that is correct, can you please tell the chamber the names of the villages to which you were sent after the 10 days you spent in Cambodia?
Answer, before we were sent to another place, Thanot Chrom, Pok Trabak, Tram Kok, and Takao province.
Juste pour évacuer cette question tout de suite.
In order for me to correctly understand what you're saying, did you stay in that village up to 1979, or did you move to other villages in the commune?
At that time, I was sent to a mobile unit, and Kabalpo, we were assigned to do dry season farming and build irrigation dam and canal. But I don't know where my parents were sent to work. I have no idea about that.
Avez-vous revu vos parents?
Did you see your parents again after that period? That is from February 1976 when you entered Cambodia, and January 1979. Even though you were a member of a mobile unit, did you see your parents again?
During the regime, there was a CPK anniversary, and we would see our parents, but we dare not ask our parents, and our tears just dropping down. So there was a ceremony of the CPK. I don't know what the specific name of that festival.
Donc vous nous expliquez que vous avez...
So you are explaining that you saw your parents on more than one occasion during that period. Did I understand your testimony correctly?
Answer, yes, it is correct.
Je voulais maintenant vous poser un certain nombre de questions.
I will now ask a number of questions on the manner in which you were treated in Tram Kok. You have said that you were arriving from Vietnam. Did the Khmer Rouge consider you as Vietnamese?
Answer. At that time and at the beginning, we did not know the organization and the internal arrangement. But people were divided into three groups, the 17 April people and the people from Vietnam, they were called Ayun. And another group of people were the base people, and this young boy from the base people used very bad word to us to call us Ayun, or contemptible Yun, or contemptible enemy. They were very rude. So they keep calling us comrade, but it is not really a good friend. It is a kind of damn friend for us from their mouths.
Merci.
Thank you. So if I understand what you're saying correctly, there were three categories of people: the 17 April people, the Ayun, and the base people. You fell under the category of the Vietnamese people referred to as Ayun, if I understood you correctly.
Answer, yes, you are correct.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Can you please explain to us the conditions under which the Ayun lived in Tram Coc Cooperative?
Answer. During the regime, people were divided into three categories. Our family member and other who returned from Vietnam, and other people who were evacuated, called 17 April people, were exposed to very miserable treatment. The base people could curse us, could hit us. We could not move anywhere. If we caught some fish, we need to put in the cooperative. So if anyone caught in catching fish without any permission, and they were tortured by giving fish to that person to eat in one sit with a large amount of fish. This a kind of a torture by the Khmer Rouge.
Merci.
Thank you. Regarding the category of Vietnamese to which you belonged and the category of the 17 April people, did they have the same living conditions? Did they have the same working conditions? And did they eat the same food?
Answer. The 17 April people and the people from Vietnam were suffering or experiencing the same treatment. So they were receiving only 10 canful of porridge for 100 people. So the food was very, very little for every one of us.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. You have stated that you were a member of a mobile unit 10 days after you arrived in Tram Coc. I would like to put some questions to you regarding that unit. How many members were in each unit? Where did they come from? And can you tell us the age or the ages of the members of the mobile units?
Answer. During the Khmer Rouge regime, people were assigned to different units. There was children unit, weather units, uncle unit of farmer, and widower units and production units. But in each unit, it would be called 50-member unit. There were 50 people, and the 17 April people and those who were from Vietnam were assigned in the same unit, and a group, there would be 12 people headed by the base people, so they would control every activity, every daily activity, including moving, working, eating, and also sleeping, and so on.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Were the Khmer Rouge able to know whether you or any of your fellow countrymen were Khmer Krom? Did they have a means of knowing where you were coming from and whether you were Vietnamese?
Answer. As far as I observe, they are very strict in review. Those who were from Phnom Penh, they have a clear idea about this, and they knew everyone from Vietnam, but they did not mistreat anyone from the base people.
Merci.
Thank you. According to you, and from what you were able to observe at the time, how did they know you were Vietnamese? For instance, when you arrived in Cambodia, were your names taken, were lists drawn up? And if yes, can you please be more specific?
The President, please wait to party. Mr. Koppe, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors, Counsel. I waited a little bit with standing up because I wasn't clear where the line of questioning is going. Apart from the fact that there are some interesting aspects to the testimony itself as to where this witness is coming from. But there's a sort of general question underlying, and that is that the segment of this trial, as we all know, is Tram Kok and Krang Ta Chan. We have a separate segment, treatment of the Vietnamese as a targeted group. Having said that, we also know that there is a history at the investigating phase and the pretrial phase leading up to a decision of the pretrial chamber of 27 April 2010, all in relation to the question whether the treatment of people from Kampuchea, Krom, as Vietnamese, etc., is in fact part of the investigation. And as I understand it now, but so I'm phrasing my objection more in a request for guidance. Are we now circumventing possibly the closing order because the treatment of Kampuchea, Krom as such is not part of the closing order. It's not part of the crimes that Nguyen Chi and Khieu Samphan are accused of. So I'm not quite sure where we are going with this line of questioning. Of course, we have no problems with this witness if he testifies to the things that he saw in relation to Krang Ta Chan or the general treatment of people within Tram Kok district. However, if we go one step further and go into the treatment of the Vietnamese, and the civil party lawyer is trying to sort of include the Kampuchea Krom within this group, then I think we have a legal problem. I'm not quite sure how to phrase it, maybe a jurisdictional problem or an outside of the scope problem, because the closing order is very clear, and that is, of course, our frame of reference. There is no charge against our client and Khieu Samphan in relation to the treatment of Kampuchea Krom. So my question, I suppose, the form of a request for guidance is, are we now entering a subject which is in fact outside not only of the segment of this trial, but outside of the closing order?
Oui, bonjour Monsieur le Président, je vous remercie.
Good morning, Mr. President. Thank you for giving me the floor. I just want to say that the Kia Sampan defense team endorses that request for clarification by our learned colleague. I think it is very important for us to respect the truth and to know that the accused are tried on the basis of certain charges, and those charges should be what we should be examining the witnesses on. Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the floor to respond. It seems to be clear, as part of the testimony of this civil party, that the Khmer Krom were likened to Vietnamese EORCs of crimes such as persecution at Tram Kok Cooperative, and it is therefore absolutely relevant for us to put questions to this civil party to enlighten the chamber on crimes of persecution, including persecution against the Vietnamese. Persecution committed at Tram Kok Cooperative. I do not intend to stray out of the scope of this trial. It is essential for us to put questions on that to this witness, particularly because he has recognized the fact that the Khmer Krom were not a subgroup as such. So we should necessarily put questions to him as to whether the Khmer Krom were likened to the Vietnamese and whether they were victims of the crimes of persecution which should be applied to these people. And that is why this civil party must be heard, and it is absolutely relevant, and I request that you should allow me to pursue this line of questioning.
President, International Court Prosecutor, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me make just a couple of remarks. First, my friend has misstated completely the ruling that occurred at the end of the judicial investigation. This was an issue that related to whether something that had been filed would be considered a supplementary submission that added additional regions to the scope of the investigation related to the Khmer Krom. It had nothing to do with Tram Kok district at all. Second point, the closing order in relation to Tram Kok district and the treatment of Vietnamese specifically references the Khmer Krom. There can be no issue at all that the testimony of this witness is part and within the closing order. And I would specifically refer you to paragraph 320 of the closing order, which contains allegations about the registration of Khmer Krom people in Tram Kok district, and also regarding the exchanges of Khmer Krom with Vietnamese. The last point I would make, Krang Tachan is an issue here. Anyone that was arrested and sent to Khmer Krom is within the scope here, whether they were Vietnamese, whether they were Khmer Krom, whether they were base people, 17 April people. So to suggest that these issues are beyond the scope of the closing order is, I think, entirely incorrect.
The President, the Chamber will not allow you to respond to the response of the other party. The President's Chet Lavang, you may proceed with the ruling on the request and the matter addressed by the party.
Président. Donc,
Thank you, Mr. President. The Chamber decides to overrule the application by the defense for several reasons. First of all, the facts to which the civil party is testifying today concern living conditions at Tramco Cooperative. In this regard, they are therefore relevant in our opinion. Secondly, the closing order makes reference to certain facts regarding the Khmer Krom. So, those questions are therefore within the scope of the trial. Secondly, the Chamber would like to recall that when we have to rule on the issue of who is a part of the Vietnamese group, whether it is Vietnamese by nationality or those who are perceived as Vietnamese. So questions regarding that difficulty fall entirely within the scope of the trial and should therefore be discussed.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Civil Party, before the interruption, I was asking a question regarding whether the Khmer Rouge had a means to know who was a Khmer Krom and who wasn't. And my question to you was whether when you arrived at Tramcock, you saw lists of persons or you witnessed operations that enabled the Khmer Rouge to register the Khmer Krom upon their arrival.
Answer: I don't know about that because it was the Khmer Rouge internal business, because I was considered as animal. So they did not inform us anything, and they did not show us any activity or conduct that we can notice or we can know what they are doing.
Thank you. And you told us a little earlier on that in your unit they were Khmer Krom as well as members of the New People, if I understood correctly. So did you know personally back then the Khmer Krom who were living or who were part of your unit and who were living in the commune of Tramcock? Were these people you knew?
For those people who were living with me in the mobile unit, for instance, I know some of them. As for the 17 April people, I also know some of them. However, the event happened more than 30 years ago, so I cannot recall most of the names. And if I see them face to face, then my memory may come back. So, as I just said, I cannot tell you all the names of the people that I knew at the time.
Thank you. I wanted to know that if during the period when you were in Tramcock, that is to say basically February 1976 and January 1979, if you witnessed arrests.
I lived in a mobile unit during the Khmer Rouge period, and we went to work at various work sites, digging canals or building dams. And at those work sites, more people from all over places in Takar province came to work there as well. And we worked together there. On the issue of the arrest or mistreatment, of course, it happened on a daily basis. However, let me stress that at the time they didn't use the word being arrested. They told us those people were sent for re-education, and we knew what would happen to them, and we were very scared, but we didn't dare ask them any question. During the time, we did not have any rights to a free speech.
And when you say that you knew well what was happening to people who were sent to be re-educated, as you said, can you be a bit more specific? How did you know this? And what happened to them, according to you?
Those people who were sent for re-education, I did not know for sure whether they were sent to be killed. But if someone was arrested at the work site by ONCA, we were told that that person was sent for re-education. And of course, I didn't know where the person would be sent to or where the person would be tortured. And it was the unit chief and probably the chief of the 50-man unit who would know what would happen to the person being arrested at the work site.
Thank you. Did you see during the period when you were in Pham Kok bodies or people who were agonizing? Is this something that you remember? Is this something that you remember having seen?
If we talk about my experience during the Khmer Rouge, and especially when I was at Pong Tak village, which was not far from Krang Tachan. However, it was very difficult for me to know where I was or which location I was sent to. For example, I didn't know there were militia unit at Krang Tachan. One day while I was plowing a field, during the break, the cows went to eat grass near a forest near the vicinity of Krang Tachan. And I did not know what the Krang Tachan was used for at the time. And when I went to fetch the cows, I saw a man by the name of Chan. And I did not know when he was killed. I saw the blood all over the body, and he was gasping for air. And he told me to inform his mother. And at that time, the militia already went for lunch. And when I saw him, I was rather shocked. So I quickly gathered the cows and returned to the place where I stayed. And I witnessed that event personally. But I did not stay for long. How many people were killed there or who were still gasping for air? I only knew that person by the name of Chan was gasping for air when I saw him. And through my knowledge, through what I heard from those young Khmer Rouge people, or the base people, they said that they could kill us easily just with a club with a bamboo club. We would be dead.
Thank you. You also brought up the name of Chan. I wanted to know if you knew this Cham. I suppose yes, because you provided his name. Was Cham a Khmer Krom?
Chan was in my mobile unit, and he also came from Vietnam. In Vietnam, we live in the khu together. Khu means in the village together. And I knew him since then. And when we returned to the Khmer Rouge regime, we were put into the same unit. As for the 17 April people, some of them were also put into my mobile unit. For that reason, I knew some of their names. And later on, we were separated. So I cannot recall the names of those people in my unit. But if I see them face to face, maybe my memory comes back.
Thank you. What happened to Chan in the end?
Chan, I saw him being tortured, but I didn't know the reason for his arrest. Although we were in the same unit or slept next to one another, we didn't know when someone was being taken away by the Khmer Rouge. We didn't know anything about the Khmer Rouge policies. In fact, when we were together, they would not come to call someone, but they would send a messenger to just whisper or call the person personally to go with the messenger. And for us, even if we were together at night time, for instance, we did not know if someone was being awakened by the messenger and went away with that messenger.
Merci.
Thank you. You also said, or in any case, that's just what I understood through the French translation, that you witnessed tortures, that Chan had been tortured. Did I understand that correctly? Was this properly translated? And if that is the case, can you provide us with more details?
As I just stated, I saw what happened to him, but I didn't observe the details or how many dead bodies were around him. I saw him lying in a pit, and the pit was about 20 meters long. And he made a noise, and then he told me. And in fact, if we believe in superstition, I thought I was being haunted by a ghost. But then he called for me, and then I recognized that it was him, Chan. And if he didn't call me by name, I would say that I was being haunted by a ghost.
Thank you. You also spoke about Chan, and you said that he was among several bodies. Did I understand correctly? And you confirmed that in the pit in which you saw Chan, there were several bodies.
At that time, I had a glimpse, and I saw some other dead bodies nearby him. But as I said, I didn't pay much attention, and Chan told me briefly, and then I returned quickly to where I stayed, because I was very afraid that I would be spotted by militia. If that was the case, then I would be dead, along with Chan.
Thank you, Civil Party. Since I don't have much time, I'm going to now ask you a few questions about another topic. And I wanted to know if during this period when you were in Tram Kok, that is to say between February 76 and January 1979, if you got married or if they asked you to marry?
Before the day the country was liberated, while I was at Angro-Lia, that is Angro-Lia village, the commune chief organized a ceremony where people were being asked to make a resolution. That was what they called at the time, and I was a part of the group. But I was sick, so then my name, I was taken off the list as it was postponed for me. And about 6 or 7 days later, the Vietnamese troops arrived, and then they all fled. And then I returned to my native village.
Thank you. Did you know back then with whom you were supposed to get married? And if yes, was this person also a Khmer Krom woman?
President, Mr. Civil Party, please wait, and Councillor Coupe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I object to the word another Khmer Kampuchea Krom woman. That would imply that the witness has said that he is Khmer Kampuchea Krom, I'm sorry. What I understood from his testimony is that he was born in Takeo province, was a refugee because of the war, and then came back to Takeo province. I haven't heard him say that he was actually Kampuchea Krom. So to imply by asking or putting the word another Kampuchea Krom person, that is misstating the evidence, I would say. So I object.
Council Consum on Mr. President, I support the objection by Council Coupe, and the question is a leading question, as the Civil Party didn't say that he was going to get married a Khmer Krom woman. Thank you.
So let me reformulate this question. Did you know with whom you were going to get married?
At that time, I was arranged to marry a woman from my native village, and her name was Ren. But in fact, we didn't proceed with the marriage as I became sick. And then later on, the country was liberated. So we didn't actually get to have a marriage ceremony.
Thank you. Did you witness marriage ceremonies without being someone who was going to get married, but sometimes did you attend marriage ceremonies?
During the Khmer Rouge regime, that kind of a ceremony where people were organized to make a resolution, it happened probably once a year. And if there were 2 or 3 couples selected from our mobile unit, then the members of the mobile unit would be invited to attend such a ceremony. But it didn't happen with the rest of the members of my unit.
Thank you. I have a last question to put to you. You said during your testimony that you were part of the Vietnamese category, the Ah Yun category. I wanted to know if the members of this category were married married among themselves or not necessarily?
During the regime, as I observed, the 17 Abri people and the Khmers who came from Vietnam were treated as one due to a similar background, and for that reason they could be arranged to get married and to make a resolution, and we could not be matched to their group or the best people.
Thank you, Civil Party. I am done with my questioning, Mr. President, and I will give the floor to my colleague, Lor Shunti.
President, thank you. The time is appropriate for a short break. We will take a break now and return at 10:30. And court officer, please assist the civil party during the break and have him return to the courtroom at 10:30. The court is now in recess.
សូមអញ្ជើញក្រងឈរ